welcome all of you to the WILPF San Jose branch, the San Jose chapter of WILPF. WILPF is the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which was founded back in 1915 by strong women who were called the most dangerous people in America at the time for wanting peace. So we're all in good company here wanting peace. So I welcome everyone. I'm Paula. I am one of the three members of the steering committee of the San Jose branch of WILPF. Our other steerers are Rowan and Joan. I'm also one of the Raging Grannies, and the Grannies open our meetings. I see some grannies here. So let me tell you how it works when we sing. I put the words up, share the screen, and then one person sings, and the rest of us, you know where your mute button is? You gotta hit your mute button. You gotta have yourself muted. And because electronics can only do one voice at a time, at least at the level that we do it. So we open with some songs, and the songs deal with reparations. So I'm going to share the screen, and Rowan, one of the co-leaders of the Raging Grannies, is going to, let me see, I have to do this right here, is going to be our singer for the opening songs. How's that? Can you see those? Yes?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, so you can see the songs. And everybody knows where your mute button is, right? So hit your mute button, and it's going to go over to, except for Rowan, and Rowan is going to lead us in the songs. Okay, Rowan.
So this is Black Lives Matter to the tune of Bye Bye Blackbird from the New Mexico Raging Grannies. Freedom, justice for us all, that's our call, standing tall. Black Lives Matter. Human rights for everyone, every daughter, every son. Black Lives Matter. We condemn all race discrimination. It's an ugly stain upon our nation. We need safety in our homes where we drive, walk, or run. Black Lives Matter. All the killing has to stop. Prosecute killer cops. Black Lives Matter. Fund the schools instead of jails. Help us thrive, win, not fail. Black Lives Matter. Put an end to mass incarceration. Now the people call for reparations. No one is expendable, everyone's valuable. Black Lives Matter. So Rich Man's House is by one of my favorite union artists, Stan Feeney. And it's one of the songs that the Poor People's Campaign uses as one of their canonical songs. I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity, took back my humanity. I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity, and now it's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Yeah, it's under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. there are infinite verses of it. If you look at Poor People's Campaign, Rich Man's House on YouTube, you will find many, many, many versions of it, because it was one of the things that we asked our theomusicologists to do. No, I don't think I'm up for it. Could somebody else please sing this one?
I'm gonna try.
Sure, we're
I
good.
know, because Rowan hasn't been feeling very well, and just keep her in your prayers, ladies.
Okay,
You're
Shirley.
wonderful. Usually she can do all the songs. Okay, let's get started. Our founders claim to be true to democracy. Sadly, they lied. They came across the sea all shouting liberty while committing hypocrisy and genocide. Our wealth was built on blacks of red and brown and black, all them we sing. Racism, fear, and greed can never, ever feed the democratic seed that makes freedoms ring. We must do more than shout. We must now bring about justice for all. The barriers between the races we're all seen. It's time to wipe the future clean. Reparations now.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Grannies, for this wonderful way of opening our WILF meeting. It's our tradition, and there are 2 songs at the end, so you don't know the meeting's over until the Grannies have sing. So tonight's meeting on reparations, our speaker presenter is a longtime WILF member. She's been active locally. She's been active nationally. I don't know, Joan, have you been active internationally?
No.
Okay, but nationally, folks, she has been known active nationally on different committees, leading the program committee last year for WILF US. She's really a star, and we're really grateful to have her tonight. Now, her connection to reparations goes back to when our chapter, WILPF San Jose, was donating some of the books from the Jane Addams, I believe that's right, from the Jane Addams Award books.
Yes.
A library where she got connected. Now, it's easy for Joan because she is a retired librarian. This was her field. So she's well connected to libraries, which, you know, one thing leads to another. And so here she is tonight to talk to us about reparations, and she'll tell you more about her connection. Okay, Joan, welcome. Please welcome Joan.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah. The books she was talking about were in our award-winning books from an organization called Jane Addams Children's Book Awards. And some of them almost every year, I think probably every year, have an African-American theme, and the libraries all have them. So we figured we would donate them to the African-American Community Service Agency. African-American Community Service Agency, which is in downtown San Jose on, I think it's 6th Street and St. James. My car knows the way, but so I went there for programs, and also the NOW group, the National Organization of Women. When I first moved here, we had our monthly meetings there for years, which was great. So I started getting the newsletter from the AACSA, and that's where I found out that they had started a group to work on reparations for African Americans. Probably most of you know some things about the reparations movement around the country. There is a bill that's been in Congress for years without much action. So hopefully with the things that are happening around, starting to happen more and more around the country now, hopefully there will be some pressure that will get activity on, I think it's HR 50. They keep being able to use the same number like probably like a lot of groups do when they're have their legislation session after session after session. So I do not know a lot about that particular bill. If any of you do, either now or later in the conversation, you can let us know more about it, but we can also look it up on congress.gov and see what the text of it is. And then, communicate with our representatives. We have several representatives here in Santa Clara County in Congress, and one of the people here tonight, Maddie Stevens, is in the Oakland area, and there are lots of representatives that cover the East Bay also. And I don't know, Jean, where you are, but at some point when it's makes sense, you can either put something in the chat or introduce yourself if you haven't. I don't think you have yet, so we'll look forward to meeting you. Most of the rest of us know each other, and so I guess we won't go around the room, so to speak, and say hello, but I'm sure everybody's saying hello with waving hands, and as we talk, we can give our what our particular interests or focus are, or give a little background on ourselves if we want to. And what we also, I want to say that there are, I see there are 11 of us here tonight. What Rowan will do is to edit this, the recording that's happening of this session, and then we'll send it out to all of the people on the 55 people on the list. And then just as surely let Maddie know and maybe Jean know about about our session tonight, we can all pass the information along that is in the recording. And also, I want you all to know that this is a project that is underway in Santa Clara County and in the state. I'll talk about that in a minute, but our local group, which is it's a project of the African American Community Service Agency, and they are including and involving people from other organizations around the county. And I've been going to the meetings for not quite a year now, but this is something that is growing and is developing, and definitely can use more people and more organizations, and so this is part of that process. Now, I did send out an announcement about a program last spring where there was a representative. There were two representatives that were national folks. One of them was a woman who was instrumental. I think she's a city council member in Evanston, Illinois, where they have a reparations program which has to do with funding for housing, either for a mortgage or for repairing a home or whatever. And that's what they chose to do in terms of one of the areas where it's been very difficult through the decades for many African American families or individuals, as far as that goes, to be able to get a home with the same kind of arrangements as a white family. Sometimes a white family will go to a place that an African American family is interested in and find out, what it would be and so on. And then the African American family goes there and it's a whole different story, right? So anyway, so that's what Evanston, Illinois has started working on. And there was also a woman in that meeting who is working with other organizations around the country. And we also have a WILPF group that is a national group on reparations. It's called the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent / reparations, because we're focusing on reparations in that particular committee or organization. And what that group has been doing is to have reports from each of the members of the committee, which is about 10 people or so usually at the meetings. And we say what's happening in our area. And then the program for that meeting is a more in-depth explanation of what's happening in a city, county, or state. And I did the one for California last summer, which brings me to what's happening in California. So probably many of you know that there is a state task force on reparations. It has a little bit longer title, but I'm not going to go through that whole long title. Anyway, it's definitely for African Americans. And that committee is was set up by the legislature and includes representatives of the legislature, just a maximum of 4, but I think maybe there are only 2. It's a fairly small committee, actually. And one of the things that I sent out in the information about this meeting and about our getting involved in learning about and getting involved in the reparations effort locally was that the link for the report, it's an interim report halfway through the assigned length of the committee, although they're trying to extend it another year of the task force. They did a report. It's 500 pages. It's great. And one of the things that I saw recently was a list of all the people who've been working on this. So in addition to that committee I mentioned, there are people from one of the state departments. I think it's the Department of, well, I could look it up, but I'm not going to do that. I should have made some notes for this meeting, for this talk. But anyway, you can see that what we have here is a person who is very interested and has learned a lot, but it's very true that I'm sure all of you have things to contribute that will be very helpful, and we can get together. This report that's 500 pages, a lot of it is, the footnotes and all that kind of thing, but it's at least 400 pages of text, and it talks about the national reasons that reparations are important. And then in each category, each area of concern, then it talks about a California, the history that's related to that area that of the need for reparations in California. So it's very useful and educational, but I suspect that since I sent the notice out, not everyone has read all of those pages. And so the good news is that the local group, it's not particularly good news, I don't think, but it's gives us an opportunity to catch up as a group, to read this and learn from it. And the next meeting, there was a meeting today, which I'll tell you about, but the next meeting of the local group from the group that's sponsored by the African American Community Service Agency will meet not until the end of January. So I'm not quite sure. I wasn't so sort of puzzled enough, I guess, to ask, why aren't we meeting in December? But we do tend to meet sort of late in the month. So maybe they figured the holidays would be too much of a distraction or a problem for that. And that group is led by a graduate student who may have now graduated, but he's a graduate student living locally, but his school work is at the University of San Diego, Essie. So Essie lives in San Diego now, Maddie and Jean. I think everybody else knows that. So this local group has been meeting for, I think, since sometime in 2021, and gradually adding more members from different organizations. The thing that I want to mention in terms of some of the members of that group is that one of the people who was at the meeting today, name is Susan Hayase, Hays as in Sam E. And she is very involved and has been for years in the Japanese American reparations work in our area. She is a local person. Charlotte sent me the link for a fairly lengthy, and therefore I haven't read it yet, piece that I will share with those of you who want to work together on this, of the history, African Americans in the age of reparatory justice. And I'm sure it talks about the history in the Japanese American community here and elsewhere, but also connects it, as she today was very connected with the work in the African American community and subject area. So let's see. There's been a focus on education this fall in the local committee. The first meeting where they had some speakers was primarily about university level, college level. And not today's meeting, there was a meeting earlier this week on Tuesday where they had speakers, and the discussion was most of the meeting was a discussion, and it was mostly about the public school grades from preschool and kindergarten through high school. And so that was in our area there, as far as I know, and if anybody knows differently, please let us know, there is not a ghetto of African Americans living, only in this area kind of thing. There may be problems, and probably are problems as far as housing, but it's not a situation where there's a black school or the kids have to be bused to get to schools that are not segregated. That's a whole other subject that I have some interesting, to me, questions about, as far as yes, it's good for everybody to be together, but it's also good for kids to have teachers who are good for them, and more than just one or two African American teachers in an elementary school, for example, or a high school. So the meeting, yes. So I told you about the meetings, and I think maybe that brings me to the point where I want to ask what questions or information the rest of you have to share, and other people can answer the questions, and I hope people will have things to say. So a lot of you are muted now, which is sort of left over from the singing, but Paula has her hand up and she's not muted, so that's great, and everybody else can find your mute button and get ready to share. Thank you.
So I want to ask, Joan, when you were talking about your meetings focusing on education, do you mean educating the public about the reparations project and the task force that is the California, or tell me what you mean when you say.
I went through quite a bit fairly fast, sorry. And the two meetings this fall, the one last Tuesday and the one in September, were focused on the institutions and the situations of African American students, rather than education, as you said, about the problems. Education, housing, the criminal justice. There are lots and lots of areas where there are very noticeable inequalities or concerns, and the education one, as far as the meeting this week, was focused on the effect of white teachers basically not doing well by African American kids. Clarify it for you, Paul. Okay, I can't see everybody's.
So Shirley has.
Oh, Eunice. We
Shirley,
didn't say hello to you yet, I don't think.
Hi, I've been interested in the African American reparations issue for a long time because I experienced it. My husband is Japanese and he's Japanese Canadian. And I don't know if people know that Canadian Japanese were also put in detention camps and also became part of an reparations program. So my husband was born in 1942, and he and his 5 brothers and sisters ended up all in the camps with their parents. I mean, right from the hospital where he was born, went to the horse stable for temporarily and then into the camps when he was a baby, and he was eligible and got money for reparations from the Canadians. So I've always felt that the Africans' efforts to get reparations is kind of difficult. And what was explained to me was that the Japanese actually took the initiative to ask for reparations, and they are a finite group. It was easy to identify who was eligible based on when they were born and where they were placed during the war. So there's like something like 110,000 Japanese who are eligible. So
US or Canada?
US. Well, this is US. Canadians are maybe closer to 10,000. Canada is a much bigger country with a much smaller population than the US. But somebody explained that the reason why the Japanese succeeded was because they were a finite number and easy to identify. So you could give money to so-and-so because they live so-and-so place. Africans have more of a problem because they're all over the country, and they don't have any historical record of their genealogy. We're talking about like over 200 years of inequality, and to give them money, you have to identify who's eligible. And it's like, I mean, I don't know if things like that are addressed at your meetings, Joan.
Oh, it's been 400 years of inequality.
Oh, sorry, 400 years of
just a point of fact. 400 years. Yeah, Joan, you got a response?
And I just read something recently that the first slaves in what is now the United States were in 1525 in Florida. And then in the rest of the continent, the 1619 date is what's used.
So it's a question of how do you identify who's eligible? And the other thing is,
maybe they can contact that guy on TV who has the genealogy.
If you know any African Americans, you know that it's very difficult for them to set up a genealogy of generations,
right?
Because they were slaves. They had no records. It was taken from them. So there was no, like the Japanese were clearly identified. The Africans have a much more difficult problem. I have in my church, I have a member, Bonnie Holly, whose mother wrote a genealogy. They could go back 4 generations, and they were an exception. A lot of Africans don't have that kind of historical record where they can trace themselves back to Africa.
Do you want to respond?
So if someone else wants to speak up, that would be fine. But what comes to my mind is families have passed the word down, and it may not be written and it may not be all official or something like that, but I think a lot of people have family memory. But if anybody else would like to speak up, that would be great. And remember, you have to unmute yourself. And sometimes we can use the raise hand thing at the bottom of the screen under reactions, or you can just, wave your hand. And welcome, Eunice, as we said before, if you want to, after you get through with the phone, if you want to share with us, that would be great, because we all did that a little bit at the beginning. So does anybody want to say anything? I have not heard about that concern yet, but it's something I will keep my ears open for, and we can all do the same. Shirley, thank you.
So I just want to say, Joan, that you sent in your notice announcing this meeting, you sent some information. You sent the link to the 400 page document, or however many pages, 500 page document. But it also, I really encourage people to open that link and read that, because the story of Bruce's Beach is really enlightening. Do you want to tell us a bit about that story, Joan?
Okay, well, there's been something recently. There have been some changes, I think, recently. I think that was the beach in Southern California. And I don't have a clear memory of all the details, but, and maybe, does anyone else have that clearly in your minds that you want to share instead of me saying what I know? No? Okay. It was a family that owned some beach property and the land above it, where they had a home, I believe. And they were in the process perhaps of opening that up to the public, or people were using it generally, and so on. And then somehow or other, it was taken away from them, when it could have been, I guess this is sort of a sample, maybe it's given as a sample of something that could have been a good situation that turned into a bad one, where the fact that then the new owners or the public turned this into a great beach, but it may even have been segregated, with Black Americans not being able to go there, much less to share it with each other and perhaps have some income to the Bruce family. Is there anything else you remember about it, Paula, or does anybody else remember?
Well, that the city government of Manhattan Beach City Council used eminent domain to take this property away. And in the article that you sent, Jen, it says, let me read it to you, as a way of making sure that the area was exclusively white.
Oh, yes.
And so this kind of systemic racism is one of the things that I think the reparations thing is addressing, is it not, Joan?
The way people have been treated, the way there has not been what we might refer to as integration, and therefore there's a lack of knowledge. I know I'm reading a lot of books these days, and I'm learning a lot. I've had, African-American friends. I worked in my hometown with the CORE group, Congress on Racial Equality, and we, worked on school integration and so on and so on. But as I said, I'm learning a lot by reading. There are lots of books these days, and it's really good. But again, if anybody else has things to say, I certainly welcome you to do so. Not just questions, but information, input, ideas, whatever.
Janine had her hand up. Janine, did you want to speak and I just didn't call on you?
Well, it's about this beach thing here. I have an article that I pulled off of Ancestry anyway, and that property was taken to them and by the Ku Klux Klan, as the property that they owned that they had bought, and the Ku Klux Klan and the white neighbors got upset because these people had land that they didn't have access to, and that's how that whole story started. And now, after gazillion, many years, they're giving it back to them. They just, they've been fighting to get their land back. And so finally it's going to happen. But it all started back with the Ku Klux Klan and the folks being jealous of the fact that these Black people had money and could own something. It's a lot deeper than that. I've got pages of it, but I'm not going to read it, but to, not take up that time. But it is a true story. And it's horrible, that, I've been on Ancestry now for a year, and I can trace my family back to 1850, which was amazing because I got this part of it yesterday, and I have been overtly excited because I could find it. But there's a whole, but back to the beach thing. This is what happened with them. That's all.
So it's great that Ancestry is doing a good job for you.
Yeah. They're doing a very good job. Very good. I found my great grandpa, and I was just excited about that because I was adopted. So I found out a few years ago about that, and so my friend gave me Ancestry for a Christmas present, and I've been on there ever since. And I have found quite a few family members through Ancestry.
Cool.
Well, and I think it's important to note that California's first governor, Burnett. Everybody know about Burnett?
Yes.
You know what
Burnett? Governor Peter Burnett, the first governor. He was a racist.
He wanted California to enter the Union as a slave state, and he was our first governor. And just knowing our own history, our own California history, it's important to know that.
Yeah.
And I see Charlotte, your hand is up.
I was just going to say that's why they changed the name of the Peter Burnett Academy downtown to, what did they change it to? I can't remember.
Ohlone. Oh,
that's right. Yeah, that's cool.
I think it's Mookway Ohlone Middle School. I was doing a program on California indigenous peoples, and that broke the news about, I think, June of 2021. It broke the news that they were going to remove Governor Peter Burnett's name from the school and rename it the Mookway Ohlone Middle School, because he was also very prejudiced, and he had actually a head tax or bounty on Indians. If you shot an Indian, you turned in the scalp, you would be paid so much money. He was a really horrible person. So
and he
anyway,
wasn't alone either.
I did this program about indigenous peoples, which is a whole other story. But I wanted to get back to, are you done yet, Charlotte? Your comments?
So what short comment, Shirley, what was your short comment?
I was just going to ask Charlotte if she's finished doing her, I didn't mean
I am, yes, thank you.
What I'm really interested in is the education of African-American children. I don't know if you know that our vice president went to
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris went to a good school, a white school, and she was bused there. I think it's called affirmative action or whatever you call that. And I have another friend who lives in San Jose, Victor Ock, who goes to a church that I was attending. And he also went from, I think, San Francisco. They bused him to Burlingame, and he received Burlingame education, although he's a young Black boy. And I noticed both of them are very high achievers, like Kamala Harris and Victor are very high achievers. Victor I know owns several homes in San Jose. I mean, he's done very well. I don't know if it made a difference that their education was a little different from if they had stayed in the inner city. So
So
you
Joan,
think
what are
about
you,
those things and you think, we're really giving those Black kids, a raw deal by not giving them education that, will make them high achievers, like the two I mentioned.
Joan,
This is Janine, excuse me, this is Janine. My children were bused, and I have a daughter who's in South Carolina as vice president of a school, a school there. So, I mean, I guess it just depends on the person, really, because when my kids started school, they started being bused, and we lived around the corner from the school, and they went down by Cal campus where they went to school. So it's just, that's one of they deserve to have the education where the teachers who
we can't hear you, Janine.
Oh,
You have to talk
I'm sorry.
like-
Well, with the busing thing, it was unfortunate for the kids that have to leave home and their neighborhood to go, but it was a good thing that they did, because the teachers where they went taught them what they needed to know, as opposed to the neighborhood schools. So, Kamala and them had a good when they went to those schools, they were altogether different from a lot of places. But it just depends. I think it depends on the student and the parents that have to work hard at getting their kids the education that they needed. You can't blame it all on the school district. It's a fight that the parents have to fight for.
And I guess
that's my personal opinion.
what I always think about when I think that, the kids who were sent to, or for whatever reason were in an integrated school, that the school that they would have gone to otherwise probably was not well funded. But it really makes me uncomfortable to think that people think that if all the teachers were Black, they were not going to get a good education because the teachers were Black.
That's not, you're right. That's not true. That's true.
But I suppose, practically speaking, and I'm sure that there were lots of kids, Black kids, especially boys probably, who were kicked out of school, a white school. And that's another whole area of problems for kids too.
I'm wondering, Joan, if we could make space and invite Maddie's voice and Eunice to bring your voices forward if you wish. This would be a good time. Have anything to say?
No, I really don't have anything that I can contribute, but I just know that learning your roots is quite important. And I'm 93 years old, and I have yet a lot to learn about my family. I've just about 20 years ago or more, we started looking into our roots, and then that's when we found out that we were integrated because we had white families. We came from a white family, and on down the line, we found out who our grandfathers were, great grandfathers. We found a lot going back through history. Fortunately, my family has been pretty fortunate because back in the days when my great grandparents were alive, their parents were able to they were able to give their slaves some property, and from that we were able to grow and have a land of our own. But that's a lot that we've learned in just a few years, and to appreciate it. And back to the subject of what's going on in the schools now, in United Women in Faith, we've been studying about the torture, the punishment that the Black kids are getting in the schools versus what the white kids are getting for the same mischievous things. And so we are supposed to be working. That's a project for our United Women in Faith to write to our legislators to try to get that the punishment taken out of the schools and lessened in the prisons as well. That's all I have to say.
We've been talking a lot about education. If anybody else has anything to say about that aspect, if not, we can go on to housing and job opportunities and lots of other aspects.
Maddie, so I just want to make sure all the voices that we don't often hear have a chance to speak.
Yeah, Portia, Penny, and
so
Penny and Lisa.
And so anybody, the voices that we have historically not listened to, particularly. And women's voices have been those we have not listened to, as well as particular groups.
I know, but Charlotte.
I can say.
Oh, good, Penny.
About education, I taught in the Ravenswood School District as a substitute teacher for probably about several years, 10 years or so. It's definitely a very difficult situation in the community. And I would just like to say that teachers make a difference, and also parents make a difference, and parents can motivate their children to respect education and to want to get an education. And that makes really all the difference in the world for a teacher if the students know that their parents approve and want them to do well in school. So that's what I have to say.
Ah,
Penny,
Yes,
that was
yeah.
good.
right.
And
Yeah,
then-
the family and the school itself. Yeah.
And then when the students get there, to have the kind of support they need to get the education,
Yeah.
get the kind of support.
Right.
And unfortunately, just from my point of view, I don't have children in the school system anymore. But support our school systems. California 50 years ago was had a reputation for a really wonderful school system, but not anymore. And part of the system of that is that we fund our schools with property taxes. Well, guess what? That makes schools uneven at the very base. And that really needs to change. Are those the kinds of things, Joan, that are discussed at all in the reparations that you're talking about?
I think there was some mention as far as property taxes, but of course, as I said, since we don't have, I hope I'm mistaken. I hope I am not mistaken in thinking that we do not have majority Black areas in Santa Clara County, and therefore we do not have low where people have not been able to have homes of values that cause high property taxes for the schools. So I think that I know Maddie said she's from the Oakland area, and I think Eunice, maybe you said you are also, and Janine, so you may not know about the pattern of real estate ownership in Santa Clara County, but Charlotte is no longer muted, so maybe she has something to contribute on that or something else.
Well, regarding San Jose and Santa Clara County, the Black population is such a tiny percentage overall.
Right.
But I would say the families that have been here and are leaving because the same reasons that the high prices are driving poor people away has been traditionally on the east side, where that is the situation, where housing prices are lower.
Okay.
I was going to comment about something else and now I can't remember. Sorry.
And also,
You'll remember.
Also to remember that even though East Palo Alto is in San Mateo County. It is right across the freeway from Palo Alto.
Yeah, right.
Economic differences there. They may not be Santa Clara County, but it's the Bay Area.
Right.
And we, that difference is stark. Although East Palo Alto has been gentrified a great deal,
Yes.
setting that whole neighborhood, but still, you know, we can claim that we don't have any enclaves, but okay, San Mateo County is right next door, so we have to, you know, pay attention to that.
That's it.
Shirley, I see your hand for a quick comment.
I just wanted to mention the role of culture and pride. I think a lot of African Americans don't have a sense of identity with the people with the nations that they used to, their ancestors came from. It's only recently that we are even seeing any movies like Wakanda Forever, you know, and Black Panther, where you can actually see heroines and heroes who are Black and culturally from, you know, many of them originated. I've had quite a few, not quite a few, I have some friends from Africa, and they have a very different sense of themselves than people from the United States and Canada. So, and I just feel that every person should take pride in their culture and learn more about it. And I'm glad Maddie mentioned that or was it Maddie that you said, and you had ancestry or gotten that as a gift? I mean, that's unusual because when I was in college, I volunteered to tutor students, and I ended up with this African guy from Ghana, and he kept flunking the history class, and I kept trying to figure out what his problem was. He said every time he came to the part about Abraham Lincoln and slavery and the Civil War, he couldn't believe it. So he would flunk every time. I said, you got to believe it, because otherwise you're going to keep flunking. So he finally got a D, and he was so proud of himself because he managed to graduate from college, because he couldn't believe what the United States was doing to the Africans.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting experience. He went on to sell what are called Ashanti gold dolls and sculptures to the museums all over the world. He was a really successful businessman. I have his cookbook.
But I think, Shirley, what you bring out is that the unique African-American situation is slavery. And that's where reparations is really based. And I think we need to, I don't have that experience in my background. And so for me, I aspire to listen and to give voice and to really hear as best I can, because I don't know that experience and I have nothing to say on it. I need to be educated. So Joan, how much of the reparations project that you're involved in is about spreading the word about what is going on to those of us who don't have that experience at all? Mm-hmm. Is there an educational arm of exploring this? I mean, are you go to these meetings? Is it open to anybody?
Yes. Yeah. What I will do is I can start sending the information, and actually, you know, those of you who live outside of Santa Clara County are very welcome at the meetings. And, you know, since they're on Zoom, or they're not on Zoom, they're on some other, you know, thing. So, but it worked fairly well for me today. I was almost surprised, because I've had so much frustration when people want to use some other system for their remote meetings. But anyway, so yes, the that group is, as I said, led by this student who's in his 20s, let's say. I don't know that he's the youngest graduate student anywhere ever, but he's not one of the older graduate students. And he was very obviously trying to finish up our meeting today in an hour. And then we weren't going to have another meeting, for basically for 2 months. Yeah, for 2 months or more. So I think what we want to do within our WILPF group, and he is encouraging people to invite others to attend the meetings and things like that. But I think that even with the holidays coming up, I think that we could plan to have a meeting of those of us who can and are interested. And I think essentially everybody on this call would be in that category. It's sort of early to mid, let's say mid December, before the 20th and not the day after Thanksgiving. And then we could have another meeting in January, and we can use email, I hope. Does everybody have email? Anybody not have email? And please, we need to get, Shirley, do you have contact information for Maddie and Janine and Eunice? Or Maddie, Jean, and Eunice, do you have contact information for each other so that we can be in touch? Maddie's nodding her head that
I think they got their information about this program from our president, Reverend Charlotte Myers. Is that where you got the link? Because I sent it to her. I don't have the list of Church Women United. So I said I would send it to the hostess of the program that Maddie and Janine were part of this afternoon at 2. It's called World Community Day, the program. And I mentioned this program at the end of.
I have put my email address in chat, and anyone who would like to be on the list, if you want to capture my email address, I'll make sure Joan gets it so she can include you on the list when the notice comes out, because I think she's going to do that with our WILF list. So Joan, we've talked a little bit about education. What are the other areas? I see that the task force, and I'm quoting here the article you sent, the task force will continue to gather testimony and evidence until summer 2023, after which members will compile these findings into a report and present it to the California legislature with specific recommendations and compensation. So what are the other areas that are being covered?
Well, that's one of the frustrations. There were no meetings last summer of this group. And the meeting last spring that I invited our list to attend was focused on the Evanston, Illinois experience that which some people apparently have problems with that, that particular program. Every once in a while, somebody will mention that they don't think it's quite the right approach or rules or whatever. And before that, I think I went to one meeting. So what we got today, among other things, was was a link to a draft that for San Jose, but it could also go to the county, for a commission to look at what should be done in our area as far as reparations. And then in another group that I'm part of, as I mentioned, the National WILPF group on reparations via the UN Decade group, there is a person there who had been getting notices and information about the state task force. And I have now signed up for that. Somehow or other, I missed the way to sign up for it before that. And so I should start getting information about their meetings. And they're going to have a 2-day meeting, December 14th and 15th of the state task force on reparations. And so there should be some results from that, in addition to the 500-page interim report that if that we can resend the link for that as well. So I did not get a feeling or specific information today about other topic areas that they plan to focus on as far as Santa Clara County. And I'll send the link for the draft resolution that is very much a draft from the local group.
So Joan, is the December 14th, 15th meeting, the state meeting of this reparations group, is that an open meeting to anybody? Can we come and observe? Do you know?
Well, it's listed as in person. And one of the things that Wesley said today was that he had not been able to find out even what part of the state it was going to be in, but he figures that that will become clear before long. They were doing video conferencing for about 4 or 5 meetings, but the September meeting was in person, and now this December one is supposed to be in person. And as I said, it's not like they're meeting every month, unfortunately. They're meeting, 10 times during 2 years. And maybe they hope they will get an extension, which I would think they would need for, as you said, Paula, to write something up after June 2023. Otherwise, they'll be trying to write something up and some kind of proposal next spring.
So what would you suggest as ways for us to get involved?
Well, I think we should meet with each other again. And then meanwhile, I will, get even more of the things out to everybody to look at first. Okay,
so do some homework on things.
Yeah.
Do some homework on things you send us.
Mm-hmm.
Get connected.
And whatever you all come up with, share with the group.
Okay.
Like Charlotte did. Mm-hmm.
And then attend these meetings, although the next one isn't till late January. So is that the best way for those of us who want to be more engaged? Is that how we would do it?
I think we should talk with friends and neighbors. And also we should, are any of the people in our Santa Clara County area who are on the call, are any of you members of NAACP or of SURGE, which is Standing Up for Racial Justice?
Showing up for racial justice.
Showing up. I never can keep track of which it is. Showing up for racial justice.
Surge.
Paul is a member of SURGE. Is anybody else a member of either of those two groups? So I think that one of the things that we will want to do after we meet together and get our ideas together and share information even more and so on is to see, what groups are we part of, what groups that are very likely, where the members are very likely to be interested in this subject, are we either belong to or interested in joining, to find out what, whether they're already connected. And I can also ask Wesley if he has information about what groups the various people are who are on his list of maybe 20 people that he sends the notice about the meetings to.
Joan, do you know if reparations meetings like this are happening in other counties?
Someone said on the committee meeting, the WILPF US committee meeting, someone from San Francisco said that she has heard now that there is a group in San Francisco. Does anybody else know of either East Bay or other Bay Area or other parts of California groups I think in Southern California, there are some.
Because
Not too clear, Joan.
Yes.
Not too clear on that young graduate student who is your chair. I mean,
Yes.
who is he connected to? Is this a school project or is this
No,
a
he's actually paid. He has a couple of different jobs with the AHCSA, and one of them I think has to do with the family services. Then this one, I saw something that he sent or someone else sent, saying that there's an organization that is providing grants for various kinds of activities in African-American groups, I believe, specifically. And they had given $10,000 to the AHCSA for this reparations work. So that's basically probably what he's being paid, which he's not working full time, in other words, on this subject.
Is there a statewide organization on this, Joan?
I have not heard of anything statewide other than the task force itself and the considerable number of state employees who are working with them on it, and probably did a lot of work on the interim report.
So Joan?
Yes.
You mentioned somebody earlier. I think her name was Susan.
Yes.
Hayase?
Yes.
Hayase, right?
Yes.
Hayase. I know her.
Yes. Oh, good. Uh-huh.
And
good.
I know that she was working on reparations with African Americans, but she's just been involved in civil rights. And I think she was one of the people who actually served on reparations and succeeded in getting it for the Japanese. She lives in San Jose. She and her husband, Tom Izu, are both really active in civil rights. So she probably has a better grasp of where reparation is going for African Americans, because she was involved with it with her own community, the Japanese in San Jose.
Right.
And I think she's still involved, but that doesn't take up her total.
Yeah, and her husband, presumably the man who was with her, and he didn't talk, but there was a man who was in the Zoom picture. It wasn't a Zoom picture, but anyway, well, what we'll do is we'll send the link for the article, which is when I printed it out, it was like 12 pages. So unfortunately, I didn't have time to try to read it, but Charlotte sent that link, and I will send that to those of you whose email I have, and you're going to ask for.
So the article you sent that I think came out in Yes Magazine, let me see if that's correct. Yes, came out in Yes Magazine. One of the things I thought was most interesting, Joan, was the last paragraph. So I want to read it because the task force is the first state level body of its kind on reparations in the country.
Woo.
California could set a significant precedent if the task force's recommendations are carried out. It will, quote, it will have a major impact on the reparations movement that we're seeing in full bloom at the local level. So it's really important for us to get involved.
Yeah.
Really, really important. So let's, we're in on the ground floor. Santa Clara County has this task force group that you've been participating in. This is the first I've paid attention to it. So this is really wonderful. This is wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, that's good.
And so I have some information that you can get. And so I would suggest that we just put it in your search engine, Reparations California. There's a whole bunch of information because apparently we're on the cutting edge.
but it's overwhelming because we're talking national. California is one state that succeeded because the concentration of Japanese were in one state. Africans are everywhere. It's like it's a very fragmented issue.
So in looking for the possibilities, which is where I like to look,
Good.
look at the possibilities and what we might do, because we're in California and
Right.
they've got a task, we've got a task force. Let's look at the possibilities and see what a difference
Okay.
we
Go
might
for it.
we might make. Yes, it might be difficult, and there's all kinds of reasons we can say no, we shouldn't do this, but there's possibilities. I support you, Joan, for what you're doing. I want to just, whoa.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
And also, you're getting some information also, no? You're going to get more information.
Are you talking to me,
Yeah, yeah, John, you
Yeah.
mentioned that you're waiting to get some more information.
Well, I'm sure that there will be some coming along, but I think we need to do what Paul is suggesting and search it out for ourselves, because
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think I'll talk to Susan Hayashi,
great,
where
excellent.
she is with that issue.
She was on the meeting today. And then we have this long article that she wrote because she's interested in what's going on now with the African American community. She wrote this up, and when you get a chance to read it, thank you very much for sharing it, Charlotte. This was posted October 7th on a website. And so when you get that, you can look at it, and I'll be reading it, and others of us will be too, and we'll see and then you can talk with her, and that'll be great. Glad you know her already.
Well, I know her because she's, well, I've known her husband longer, Tom Izu. He was the head of the California History Center at
Oh,
De Anza College, so I knew him
Oh.
through that.
at De Anza?
Yes, he retired, so
Oh my gosh, then I've met him.
yes, you probably have. He came
Yeah.
to speak about his experience to a group when I served on the county commission for human relations. He spoke about his experience.
Yeah, and we went to the history center and to the library and so on, and yeah, right. Been at one or
And
two.
both of them are very involved with Northern California ACLU as well, the local chapter.
They're very active in the civil rights movement, not only the Japanese.
That's
They've
great.
Kind of gone beyond just their own ethnic group.
So, Charlotte, you said Northern California, the office in San Francisco, as opposed to the local Santa Clara.
The local chapter.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what happened to it because it used to have regular meetings, but
yeah, I think I've seen a name.
They're like a subdivision of the San Francisco office.
Okay. Okay, great.
So what other questions do we have for Joan? Because we're coming up, wrapping up our thing. What other questions, or what other comments? How would you like to contribute?
Info, right.
What other information to share? So Joan, how is WILPF US involved in reparations?
Okay, in WILPF US, we have several, they're called issue committees. And the one that has the reparations work in it is called Advancing Human Rights Issues Committee. And one of the subcommittees, it actually functions through subcommittees rather than as a whole, because several people are part of more than one subcommittee. So we don't have meetings where we break up into smaller groups. We just have separate meetings of these subcommittees. And one of the subcommittees is United Nations, or we just say UN, International Decade for People of African Descent, reparations. And that group meets monthly.
Okay, so they're having active, WILPF through that subcommittee is having active conversations and work on this particular issue. Is that right?
Yes, right. What's happening in different places.
Now, who here has really been involved in reparations before hearing about this tonight? Who has been in reparations for African Americans before tonight? Is anybody, you know?
I just heard it on TV. They were looking for it, but they haven't gone ahead much in Congress.
It's time, Joan, for us to start walking our talk on this one. So you're leading the way. You got the flag, and
Joan started.
and lots of people are contributing.
Hopefully, let's see.
Great.
So when is the next meeting on this subject?
Okay, that's very good, Essie. I started thinking maybe we could get to that. That's great. Is our Friday evenings good, or would some other day or evening be better?
You mean a WILF meeting to do this again?
Yeah.
Or do you mean the task force meeting that we could go to? Which one are
the task force meeting that we can go to will be at the end of January. And I think we could meet a couple times before that as our local WILPF group, seeing what we can learn about and share and think about in terms of what our group could do as far as reparations. And we would certainly welcome the three wonderful women from East Bay, and Shirley's going to help get the word to you and friends. Maybe what you could be thinking about, and I will also ask the people in the San Francisco people, and we can ask the Wesley at the San Jose, Santa Clara County, San Jose group, whether they know of people in the East Bay who would, I'm sure, appreciate you working with them, but so would we.
Is there any chance that the person who is working with the African American Community Center, who is the paid coordinator, what did you say his name was?
Wesley Cox.
Is there any chance he could come and talk to Will, or is he just working with the commission?
Let's see. As I said, he's being paid $10,000 for the year. And I think that he has lots of people working with him already. I'm not sure. I think it's possible that after we meet together, we might find that we want to ask him about that for January. But I think what would be maybe more likely is that those of us who could go to the meeting at the end of January. Hopefully after we've met a couple times together and gotten some more ideas of what other, what various ones of us know or can find out in the meantime. I guess from what I have seen and heard of him, it's not like he's out to organize the county and all of its residents who are interested or groups.
Okay, so it's a bottom-up action.
And it's sort of like, how can we contribute? And one of the ways that we talked about today in the meeting, and that he provided some leadership on, is that at some point there will be an effort to get both San Jose and the county to do some kind of activity about reparations, hopefully within the next 6 months. And that one of the things that we did today was he had us say, what would you say if you were testifying that something ought to be done? So that was the sort of the larger community activity thing that he was talking about today, was having us work on.
So we're overstaying our welcome, but we got to close with our songs. And I'm going to share the screen, and I'm hoping everybody will mute. And there are, Shirley, will you sing the last song for us? I'll sing the first one. There'll be two. And so I'll share my screen. And
Shirley's got the last one memorized after all these years.
well, it has different verses.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
if everyone will mute yourself, I will sing this one. And I just want to give a big shout out to our Raging Grannies. We took a song that's sort of related and we made it fit tonight. So here we go. How does the system support racism, conferring racial dominance on one group, of white skin, opens many doors, attitude is not enough to change the system, We must not be silent, we must be aware, work to make the system work for all, There's a myth that all are equal, and so can rise, It's not true, We must be aware, freedom to own, is for just a few, powers not equal, Will we choose, use our power, reconstruct the system on a fairer base, Now you know the meeting's over when we finish this song. Okay, Shirley, it's to you.
I just wanted to say that WILPF started as an anti-war group and also trying to give women some rights. It's taken over 100 years. We're still in war and we still have not gotten equality for women. So this is our theme song. When we make peace instead of war. When we make peace instead of war. How I want to be in that number. When we make peace instead of war. When everyone is fairly treated. When everyone is fairly treated. How I want to be in that number. When everyone is fairly treated. When streets are safe for all to walk. When streets are safe for all to walk. How I want to be in that number. When streets are safe for all to walk. When neighbors welcome everyone. When neighbors welcome everyone. How I want to be in that number. When neighbors welcome everyone. When we make peace instead of war. When we make peace instead of war. How I want to be in that number. When we make peace instead of war.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shirley. All